I'm joined now by Rick Shenkman. He's the author of Political Animals, How Our Stone Age Brain Gets in the Way of Smart Politics. Rick, I read an analytical piece today where they surveyed historians, scholars, former diplomats. It seemed like a universal consensus that Rex Tillerson may go down as one of the worst Secretary of States in history. Is that because he was undercut by the president or because he was just in over his head?
No matter what president Rex Tillerson was serving as Secretary of State, he would have gone down as a bad Secretary of State for the primary reason that he didn't really understand what the job is. Being Secretary of State means taking public positions, having a public presence on big issues, and he was often hiding. He hid from the public, and he hid even from his own State Department employees. Also, he came in with the idea that he was going to reorganize the entire State Department. Well, this was just nuts. The guy had never worked in government before, and his first action is, I'm going to reorganize you because you're doing everything wrong. That'd be like some guy who'd been in government his whole life going to take over Exxon, where Tillerson had been before, and saying, okay, I'm going to cut the staff by 20 or 25%. It would have been ludicrous, and it was ludicrous for Tillerson to come in and say, this is going to be my big agenda item. It was crazy.
Well, let's amplify on what you're talking about. He also described his boss as a moron, although he denied it. He never cultivated relationships on Capitol Hill, which you definitely need. Didn't seem to have much influence in the White House. Did not have a lot of support with the rank and file at the State Department for the reasons you just pointed out. And staying in character today, he didn't take any questions when he came out to make his statement, illustrating his poor relationship with the press. So how is the State Department going to change under Mike Pompeo, do you think?
Well, Pompeo is apparently fairly organized. He's done a good enough job at the CIA that people deep in the bureaucracy haven't been leaking against him. So the absence of bad information in the public square about Pompeo's 1 year plus term at the CIA indicates that he's probably a good bureaucratic in player. So maybe he'll come in and reverse some of these cuts. He certainly can't do a worse job as far as the employees of the State Department are concerned. The bigger question is just, is he going to be the hardliner that people seem to think that he is? And that's what I'm going to be sitting and watching closely.
Yeah, so what do you think? What's the answer to that?
Well, if the past is prologue, this former Tea Party congressman is going to come in there, and he's going to take a really hard-nosed attitude toward China, toward North Korea. We might wind up getting into a war. Tillerson was much more interested in cutting a deal over North Korea. Pompeo, I think, is less interested in it. We'll find out what happens. He's going to be a very different Secretary of State because he's a hardliner, and he's going to play to Trump's hardline instincts. So this is, buckle in. We could be in for a really startling ride.
Well, you brought up the DPRK. There's no envoy to the DPRK. There's no ambassador to South Korea. Now there's no Secretary of State, and yet there's this big summit upcoming between President Trump and Kim Jong-un in May. It doesn't look like Pompeo is going to be confirmed at that time. Is this the best time to have a meeting like that?
Well, they may have to put off the meeting because we have to have a Secretary of State who is in attendance at this meeting. It can't just be some lower-level bureaucrat who's holding the reins of the State Department together while we're waiting for this confirmation. So there may have to be a delay in that meeting. The bigger question is just, is Donald Trump going to allow the Secretary of State to be the Secretary of State? He's basically been his own Secretary of State for the last 13, 14 months. And that makes anybody in that position of Secretary of State in a really tough position because they have to be able to go out, fly all around the world, talk to these foreign leaders, and really be able to say, I represent the president, and what I say is what the president believes, and this is U.S. policy. Tillerson was going around, and at every turn, Trump was tweeting, undermining his position. So if that continues, well, we're going to continue to have chaos in the running of American foreign policy.
Well, Rick Shenkman joining us from Seattle. Thanks so much for your analysis.